Danny, I've been looking forward to chatting with you for the last couple weeks.
You as well, Thomas.
Yeah, thanks, man. So I looked at Eastshade, and I think there's 4,000 reviews on Steam. It's very positive, correct?
Yeah, I think so.
That's just that. I don't know if people understand how impressive that is. That number one means it was a highly profitable game just because of the amount of reviews. That's more reviews than my games have gotten. And to get a very positive score on Steam, especially with like a very simple, cozy game that we'll talk all about this, but basically Eastshade is super chill and there's not a ton going on except for a few high quality gimmicks that are very valuable and very unique. Point being, you did something, and then I'll let you introduce yourself, but I just want to say you've done something with Eastshade that is very scary, and that is you keep it simple, you avoid the bloat, and you just trust that that single gimmick is good enough and that's all players are going to want. And so I'm impressed with what you've done with Eastshade. So all that said, you want to finish up your introduction. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, well, my name is Danny Weinbaum, and I have been an indie developer for, I think, 14 years now. I quit my job in AAA games. I used to work at a studio called Sucker Punch Productions, made infamous Second Son, and now probably more famous for Ghost of Tsushima, which I did not work on. I left before they started that. But I quit to make Eastshade. I knew I wanted to make a really weird game where the setting was kind of the star of the game. And so I started working on that, and then eventually ended up roping my now wife in a few years in, and we finished it together in 2019, and it shipped. Yeah, and it's made about a little over, gross revenue is about 3 million, well, 3.5 million, all platforms, and now we're working on a new title called Songs of Glimmerwick, and that's I think
okay. I didn't know you were making a new game.
Yeah.
Songs of what? I'm looking it up right now.
It's called Songs of Glimmerwick.
Songs of Glimmerwick. Ooh. Oh my goodness, and it's a deviation from the 3D vibes. It's 2D now.
Do you want to talk about it now, or do you want to do it a little later?
No, there's a couple more important questions that I want to ask you.
Okay.
By the way, if you're like me and you always dreamt of making an indie game as a full-time job, I have a free webinar below that goes into exactly how to make 6 figures with just a demo. I was just like you for years. I thought I had to make a game in its entirety before getting a paycheck, but there's actually 3 ways to make 6 figures before even finishing your game. I've done this multiple times, so check it out below if you do want to go full-time indie. And thanks for watching. I want to hear about this story. Okay, so the story of going full-time indie, because you're what I would call the 2010s. I don't know what the right word is. 2010s indies, like the OG indies, right at the tail end of the Flash era dying. How old are you, by the way?
I don't feel like I'm an OG. I feel like I'm like third
generation
onslaught or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, how old are you, Danny?
I'm 33.
Yeah, so
34
like,
or 33.
okay, so we're the same age. We're from the same era. So I don't know what that era would be. I started when I was 18, when it was 2010 or 2009. So I guess I was 19 years old when I really released my first like game that made some money. Was that the same time you started making games?
2000. Yeah, I think so. I think I got my first job at ArenaNet, actually, who made Guild Wars. I believe I was the youngest person at the whole company. I think I was 18 when I first started there.
Okay. So I don't know what generation that makes us, but it's definitely, like there's a lot of people listening right now where making games in 2010, they were 10 years old, you know?
Right.
They have no point of reference. So, you probably were inspired by Edmund McMillen and Jonathan Blow. Am I wrong? Am I right?
I've certainly seen Indie Game the movie. I think I had already, I can't remember if I had already gone indie by the time I saw those movies, but
right, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so give me the story. Let's start from the very beginning of when you started making games, that first time you opened up software, all the way to the point where you released Eastshade and things started working for you.
I think I started with like my initial inkling on my path to games, I think, was a program called Vue, which is a really niche, like foliage visualization program for mostly for film. Anyhow, my brother downloaded it, and I was just messing around with it, and I got pretty sucked in right away. I knew I wanted to be a 3D artist at that point. The only thing I didn't know was what industry I wanted to go into. And I think Half-Life 2 was the game that made me feel like, oh my God, I want to make game environments. Like I want to make this sense of place. So that's when I started really honing in on video games. I eventually went to a trade school called Future Poly, which is now closed. And it was kind of different from other schools because they weren't accredited. Like, you weren't going to get a degree or anything. But the teachers, most of them worked at ArenaNet. And the whole like kind of impetus for starting the school was basically most teachers in academia for video games have no idea what they're talking about. And it's partially because the schools are accredited, which means you need a master's degree. And basically no artists in the games industry have master's degrees. Even though some of them like the idea of teaching, ain't nobody going to go back to college to get a master's degree. So you end up with a bunch of teachers that have no idea what they're talking about and have really no business teaching how to be an artist in the games industry. So I kind of picked up early on that schooling wasn't going to be important. Like I knew that I just needed a banger portfolio. And this trade school really helped. It was like a 3-month course. And it was like an explosion. It was like a Cambrian explosion of like learning at that time. And I was just right in the right time in my life. I had nothing else going on. It was like do or die. I kind of had like, I guess, low self-esteem about like wanting to be an artist in my life and hoping that I'd be able to get a job. And I told myself like, well, I'm going to get a job in the games industry or I'm going to die trying. Like, this is what I'm going to do. There is no backup. And I just went super duper duper hard. I was working like 12 hours a day on my portfolio pieces during the course of this class, and ended up the teacher threw out the teacher, which actually was my mentor for a number of years. He threw out sort of a bone to the class. He said, we're looking for interns, and they put out an art test for the entire class, and basically everyone did it. But I ended up landing the internship, fortunately, and that was kind of my start into games. And then I guess the next like 3.5 years are kind of boring. I don't know. I worked in AAA. I learned some stuff, but mostly I just, did environment art stuff. Let's see. And then, so when
hang on, you can't gloss over AAA like that. What was it like working with AAA? I mean, you clearly wanted it out of your life because you abandoned it. And so I got to figure out what happened there.
So I really liked working in AAA. I was treated really well. I know a lot of folks talk about, crunch and toxic work culture and things like that. My experience was fortunately really good. I started working on, I knew I always wanted to make my own game. I knew that the entire time I was working in AAA. I was actually learning to code in the wee hours during that entire time period. I sort of felt like, okay, I've got like art in the bag. I'm an industry level artist, and now I'm going to learn how to code. And well, I actually dreamed of finding a programmer, and when I realized that was probably not going to happen, at least not one that like wanted to work on my game, which is kind of like, why would they want to work on my game? Like, why wouldn't they would probably want me to work on their game? So I was like, I'm just going to learn how to code. I started working on what would become eShade, and I just was like so addicted, like more addicted than I've ever been on any, like imagine like your most addictive moment on like an RPG, like World of Warcraft high, like in that moment when you can't wait to play. That's basically how I was about working on eShade. And I realized I couldn't stay up till 5 a.m. every night and try to go back into work every day. It was killing me.
And how old were you?
I think I was 24 or 23.
Yeah. Dude, I feel like you and I were like, dude, this is a crazy thought. You and I were both waking up early, and we were both doing this at the same time. I mean, I was on the East Coast and you were on the West Coast.
Maybe we were even waking up at the same time. I was going to bed early. Like I was going to bed at like 4 or 5
Yeah.
a.m.
But that's just crazy. It's almost like there's this spirit or like this zeitgeist of like too motivated devs. I don't know. I'm thinking maybe a little bit too poetic about this, but there was, dude, I know what you're talking about because I was up at 5:30, 6 a.m. before my day job.
Did you already have a baby at that time?
No.
Okay.
Heck no. That would have been horrible.
Yeah, because I was wondering. I was like, I feel, that would be hard.
if I had had a kid when I was trying to build my first game, the kid would that would have sounded bad. The game would have died.
The game would have died. Yes.
The game would have died. My game baby would have been put down. Okay, because it was, man, that was dark. But that feeling you're talking about, dude, where it's almost like a religious experience, and it's just you, and you're sitting in front of a computer, and you're like playing God, and you're putting this world together, and nothing else matters, and it's almost like you have infinite energy. But also when it's done, when you close, I'm assuming you work in Unity. Is this correct?
Yeah. I started out in CryEngine, but anyhow, this is in the weeds.
So when you close Unity, and then I'll shut up here, but when you close Unity, suddenly the exhaustion catches up. It's almost like you went through a time portal, and all of a sudden you're like, what did I just do? I just worked 6 hours.
Then you have
do
to
you know
go
what
to
I'm
bed.
talking about?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And then you have to go to bed and go to work, at least in my case. It is, it was very, very powerful. It was a very special time in my life, especially when I made the decision to quit. It was like, that first year was just, every single day was like Christmas. Like going to bed was like Christmas morning. I couldn't sleep because I was so excited about waking up and working more on it. I guess I should probably cover, everyone's going to ask this, like, how did you just quit your job? So since, like I said, I knew I always wanted to make my own game, and I always assumed that nobody was just going to give me a bunch of money. I was making like white collar money pretty early, especially for how young I was, but I was living like a college kid, and I continued to live like a college kid basically until Eastshade shipped, just because, both my now wife and I, Jacqueline, we were just really pinching our pennies, and I was pinching my pennies throughout my career in AAA because I knew that I wanted to have this pile of money. I actually thought I was going to take till I was like 50 or something. Like I thought I'm going to need a ton of money because I'm going to need to hire people. Mm-hmm. But then I saw people making really impressive games on their own, and I sort of got a little bit motivated, a little bit maybe jealous, even a little bit competitive. I've always kind of had a chip on my shoulder that is completely unjustified, and I haven't everyone's been really nice to me in my life and supportive.
Yeah, Mr. White Collar Money over here.
Exactly, I know. And everyone's always just like believed in me and stuff, but for some reason,
I feel the same though. I'm the same way. Go ahead.
Okay, that's good to know. I'm not alone.
Yeah, no, you're not.
For some reason, I've got this screw loose that's like, I'm gonna effing show them all. Like, I'm gonna show them. It's like, show who? Like, what are you talking about?
Mom and dad. It's always mom and dad.
I guess. I don't know. My mom thought I was the bee's knees since I was like.
Well, you didn't. Yeah. For me, it was always like family or like a girl who turned me down in middle school. It's like if she could only see me now. It's like, she didn't care you made a game. What's wrong with you?
Nerd. You're still a nerd.
You're still a freaking nerd. I don't care how much money you made.
So anyhow, I was saving money. When I quit my job at Sucker Punch, I think I had about $130,000 in the bank. So that's what gave me the ability to go all those years without a job. Now, my initial plan was to spend 2 years, and if I couldn't come up with a game in 2 years, I didn't want to spend my whole farm on it. I wanted to, okay, you spent your 2 years trying to make a game. You didn't make a game. Go back and get a job, Danny. Well, that didn't effing happen. Not even close. Like, by the time 2 years was up, not only had I started to rope Jacqueline in, and I think she quit her job about 3 years in, if I'm not mistaken. There was like no thought in my mind. Like, at that point, the feeling that I had working on Eastshade was like, if I die, just let it be after I ship Eastshade. Like, I seriously felt it was like my final mission in life. Like, it was so, I felt like when I finished it, I felt like I'm good to go. Like, of course, now I have a baby, so I don't feel like that anymore. But at the time I finished,
do you feel that way at all?
Do I feel that way at all now?
Yeah, like what I mean is, sorry to interrupt, but for me with my kids, I'm on my third kid. Just had my second daughter, my third kid a month ago. I do not care about games. It's not even in the same dimension. Like, it's totally different playing field of how I used to. I enjoy making games, but like this religious experience and this integrity and this principled game development where it's like everything, it's gone. And for me, it's for the better, because it's not a healthy frame of mind.
I see.
I love making games. It's very, very fun, and my ideas are just as good. I just don't like. It's not like this God that is always in front of me. You know what I mean?
I totally understand. Yeah.
So I'm curious how you feel with kids now.
I guess I don't know. I don't want to sound like a monster. I can't imagine going back to like not having my son. Like, I would never. I mean, it's such a special thing. Like, I could never imagine my life without him. But sometimes I do miss just the like total immersion that I used to be able to have with working. Yeah. And I do kind of get sort of starry-eyed about making games. I guess I have a little of it. It's possible, since I only have one and he's only 11 months old, possible I'm like on the ramp off right now to like a more well-adjusted, right. Normally.
None of us are wrong or right. I'll say with my first kid, with my daughter, the transition, I told myself, I said, Thomas, you're not going to let your kids become your identity. You're still going to be Thomas.
That's funny. I told myself the same thing.
Of course you did, because you saw all these other friends of yours becoming horrible people when they had kids.
No,
that didn't happen. Well, I saw it happen, and I told myself I would never do that. And slowly, when the more kids you start bringing into your arms, the more you're like, I just want to make, you kind of want to make games for them. It's not for you anymore.
Now, I make games for them so that you can be financially stable, or like that they want to.
All of the above.
Okay. I'm worried my kid's not going to give a crap about any game I make. They're just going to want to play whatever the cool new game is. They're just going to play Fortnite or something.
Dude, your son, it's your son, right?
Yes, that's
11
right.
months old. Mm-hmm. When he walks in, when he's 3 years old and he walks into your office and you're making Songs of Glimmerwick 4, he's gonna say, Daddy, show me songs. No,
really?
Daddy, show me Glimmerwick. Show me Glimmerwick. And you're gonna sit him on your lap, and he's gonna say, make the boat green.
No way, really? This sounds wonderful.
make the trees red, Daddy. And then suddenly you're gonna dedicate that game to him. I'm dead serious. Assuming you're a good person. If you're not, no, I'm kidding.
Incorrect assumption.
Anyway, so all that said, you mentioned that you do miss that feeling of being this hobbit.
Yeah.
And you're just writing your book like Bilbo. Mm-hmm. You miss that feeling of making
pretentious artiste. Yeah.
I wouldn't call it pretension. It's this cozy world that's yours, and it's safe. You mentioned in Songs of Eastshade, you wanted to make something that was safe. And I want to ask you, and you mentioned this in your video, I watched it. Why did you want to make something safe?
Well, I just felt like both Jacqueline and I really, really like Elder Scrolls. And the thing we like about Elder Scrolls are the moments where you're not fighting and where you just feel like, that the word cozy is so tired now. I actually hate even to use it. It's like it's been hijacked into like every single game. I guess like 5 years ago I would have said, coziness is something that it's an emotion that games are really great at evoking, and we just wanted to make a game dedicated to it, I guess.
Do you not did you not feel safe when you were making this game?
I don't know. I felt like I did feel scared a little bit, but no, I don't think I felt particularly safe or unsafe necessarily.
Okay.
Especially because I didn't have. I just knew that, you know, we didn't have kids yet or anything. I just knew that everything was going to be okay, even if the game failed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we also didn't assume it was going to fail just because, like, our wish list numbers and stuff were pointing to, okay, it's going to make some money. Like, it's going to do, you know, we had a certain minimum threshold or minimum window that we thought that the game was going to make, and that was fine for us.
Okay. So going back to your story, you had $100,000 in the bank, which sounds crazy to people. Everyone should know that once you get to $100,000, $100,000 doesn't seem, this sounds so wrong, but it doesn't seem like a lot of money once you get there.
No, not if you live in the West. Like, yeah, not if you live in the United States.
That's
seriously, right. And especially now. I mean, it was more back then than it is now. But yeah, I mean, to make it, we made it 4 years before we moved in with my grandma at the end.
Wow. Wow.
So, and we're, you know, so fortunate that we had, it wasn't like dire, like we were going to be out of house and home. It wasn't like that. It was more like, hey, you know, grandma offered, you know, her spare bedroom. Like, that's a great way to save money. Like, it's looking pretty tight here. Like, we would have been fine. There would have been options, but,
right.
So, you know, basically we made it 4 years on probably more than 130,000 because Jacqueline quit and she added savings as well.
Okay.
But it was tight, you know, especially living in the area we live, which is extremely expensive. And then we also had paid for a little bit of contracting. I should probably point out, like, if anyone watches the Eastshade postmortem video, it seemed like a lot of people in the comments felt like since we named like a PR firm and a porting house, they're assuming that like the game must have cost like $3 million to make or something like that. No. But these things are pretty short-term contracts, and a lot of the money was actually spent after the game. Like, we didn't have a simultaneous launch, so we were able to pay for the porting with our first paychecks from Steam.
Yeah.
So it was a relatively small amount of money we spent on contracting. The vast majority was just Jacqueline and I living for 4 years in the sultanic Western country of the United States.
That is such an interesting adjective. Wow.
Well, sometimes I wish we lived in Poland or something. I feel like game dev would be a little bit easier, but
probably. Yeah. Yeah. There's actually some, I think Feardemic is in Poland. One of the publishers that they're a friend of mine. Oh, so cool. Listen, I think I love trying to ground the audience into a different frame of thinking, because they're hearing you right now and they're saying, I read a comment on your video and I wonder if, I'm not going to call out the person, and if you don't want us to talk about this, we can cut it from the final edit, but it said, so you're saying the secret to making indie games is to last 5 years and have a genius designer wife. Got it. That was the top upvoted, one of the top upvoted comments.
Yeah, I think that's the top one.
I can't tell whether it's tongue in cheek. I can't tell whether it's completely negative. But I read this comment and I'm like, that is not fair at all, because Danny has backbone and 99% of game devs don't. And I get angry because I'm like, if people would just, like, you have this drive and you said it doesn't make any sense. It's a chip on your shoulder. Mm-hmm. And it pushed you through those 5 years. And maybe you were born with it, but for some reason you've got the work ethic and you've got the discipline. And comments like this, they don't understand that that's what got you where you are, not your genius wife.
She helped.
Right? I'm sure she did, but you didn't just sit, like, I mean, it's just, I don't know. Does that frustrate you?
So with YouTube comments, I have an interesting relationship with them, because I do think a lot of people are joking. And they just sort of say things and they don't really understand. Well, there are so many mean comments that you start seeing red everywhere. Like you start
I
wondering
know.
everything is a mean comment. And yeah, that one could totally be read as like just a really dismissive, mean comment, or they were just trying to make a joke. I think that one maybe was trying to make a joke. But I've had enough comments that were like sort of like that in a way, but not trying to make a joke. They're definitely trying to be negative.
Well, what's your response to that? The comment is, so your secret is, the secret to last 5 years is that, the secret is to last 5 years. So what they're saying is have a bunch of money.
Right.
And have a genius designer wife.
Yeah.
Got it. What do you say to the people listening who don't have that? Do you agree with that comment? Assuming
a negative interpretation of the comment, I think if we're going to talk about what the secret is, it's not as if I give someone $130,000, they're going to be able to make an Eastshade. And if that were true, then obviously, I mean, everyone would basically have a money tree, right? Because if anyone could turn 130 grand into, 2.5 mil or whatever, then it would be, publishers would be able to make like 20 Eastshades a year or something. So there's something there. I think people often underestimate, and I don't know why this is. People underestimate, or they don't want to acknowledge like skill and experience as a factor. And especially with regards to indie games, like everyone's like, oh my God, making an indie game is so risky. It's such a dice roll. It's like, well, it's not a goddamn game of poker. Like, it's not like, you just like shuffle up the deck and pull out your hand and let's see how good your game is. It's not like that. If you have, strong skills in certain things and you leverage them and you do some market research and you make a game that you have a reasonably good chance that a lot of people will like, and you play to your strengths, then you can make some money in this industry. And certainly I don't think, I guess I should stop there.
Well, I won't stop there because I'm not going to talk about the comment anymore. But what I am going to talk about is to make a game that makes $3.5 million or whatever the gross was, and then I think the net was something like 2.5.
Yeah, that's right.
To do that with 150 grand is crazy. That is very difficult.
Yeah,
I don't know what the numbers are for my game Twisted Tower, but it's somewhere around $500,000. Nice. More. I don't know what it is in terms of the expense. And
gotcha. Okay.
No, so it's not nice. That's bad. It's very expensive to make big, borderline AA shooters.
I can imagine.
And so what you accomplished is more than just, hey, I've got money. Hey, I've got a talented wife. What you did was, first off, to even be like the willpower to save all that money and to live like a bachelor, or you said like a college student. To do that in and of itself is half of what's impressive about this whole thing. You saved up all that money and lived a very simplistic life, it seems.
Yeah,
so that you could accomplish your dream. Yeah. Okay, so this 5-year period, you said it was 5 years of making this game?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. This 5-year period, can you talk to me about the production side? Technically how it was made? Because what we just discussed is the emotional side of how you had the willpower and what you did with your schedule and your lifestyle, right? And that's a big question a lot of indie game developers or aspiring game developers have is, how do I power through the emotional side? But now the question is, what was the production side like? I'm talking engine, code, assets. So we used Unity, yeah? We used Unity. By the way, I'm watching the trailer and it's like, I wouldn't compare it to AI art in the sense of quality, but you know how AI art, you can just tell? There's something about Unity, and I think it's the lighting, because I use Unity too. And I saw the lighting and I was like, that's Unity.
Interesting.
And I even, dude, you did amazing work. It's just Unity's lighting has this weird look.
Interesting.
So do you know what I'm talking about or no? Am I insulting you?
No, I mean, I think Unity's spec model is really good. I don't exactly know what it is. I don't know if I could tell. I think the only reason why I could tell what engine a game uses is just like, oh, this I probably can guess what kind of production budget this game had, and based on how these shaders look, I'm pretty sure they didn't have a tech artist, and it's unlikely they used anything but Unreal for this.
Right.
In Eastshade's case, I wrote most of the shaders, not from scratch. I still use the Unity spec model.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I think it's kind of what comes out of the box.
Was this URP or was it built-in render pipeline?
It was built in. It was the old days. Yeah.
Wow.
URP didn't
okay,
even
maybe
exist.
that's why I could tell. It sounds like I'm insulting you. I'm not.
No,
it looks amazing. There's something about the shadows. It's something about the shadows in Unity's lighting. You can
That
just
is
tell.
something. The shadows do have a particular look. Yeah.
Mainly
maybe that's
that they're awful. That's part of it.
compared to Unreal anyway.
Yes,
it's hard
yes.
to get good shadows for sure.
Can we discuss Unity versus Unreal? Do you have any insights or opinions about Unreal?
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't, right? Why not?
Why did you not choose Unreal?
I have used Unreal UDK, it was called in the past, in the days of yore.
Wow.
I started messing around with Unity. On paper, at the time, nobody had really made anything super beautiful with Unity yet, at least as far as I can remember. But on paper, I was looking at all the graphics features, and I was like, as an environment artist in AAA games, I was like, I could make something look absolutely like this. This is everything I need. I could make AAA looking stuff with this.
Right.
Just talking about, it's got screen space ambient occlusion. It has an offline GI, light mapper. It's got all the, you can use a second UV channel. Okay, I could work with that. It has a high level shader language. I could do anything I want. So when I looked at all those things, I knew I could make something beautiful. And then after trying it for a few months, it was like, yeah, it's the reason that everyone thinks that Unity doesn't look as good as Unreal is because all the great artists go to Unreal because they think that Unity doesn't look as good. And that's not, especially now, like I do think that Unreal comes with some really nice things out of the box that Unity doesn't. The reason I stuck with Unity was because I really liked how Unity is a blank slate. Unity doesn't really make assumptions about what your game is going to be. I remember in Unreal, the way to create an interaction system, at least in the UDK days, was literally to shoot an invisible bullet at something and get the callback for what you hit. So it was clearly just a shooter, right? Compared that to Unity, which doesn't even actually have a concept of a player when you first start it. It doesn't make any assumptions, and I really like that blank slate, and that's why I ended
It almost assumes that you're not even making a game because everything's called it's like even things called a scene or a prefab.
It's true.
Right?
Very generic. Very generic.
In Unreal, you've got actors, right? And I believe they call them levels, not scenes. I could be wrong, but I find what you're saying to be fascinating because it's totally true. And that framework, that way of thinking, dude, that is the OG framework. It's back in the Flash days. Flash was you make games and you make animations. So we'll give you a white screen. That's what you start with. And when I was deciding what I wanted to move away from when Flash died or when Steve Jobs killed Flash, I decided, okay, I need to go with whatever has a similar framework. And Unity had that similar framework. In fact, I think that they built that framework to compete with Flash's framework. I could be wrong there. But whole point being, that seems advantageous to you, right? It's like, oh, good, it assumes nothing. But for a new generation of game developers, I could think of Gavin, the creator of Choo Choo Charles. He's a good buddy of mine, and actually his podcast is right before this one. His way of thinking is fully Unreal. He's in the Unreal world where it's things are sort of built for you, and there's frameworks that are built ready to go out of the box, which actually I think is a more logical way of making games, especially if there's multiple templates you could use and start with.
You're saying that Unreal is the more logical way of making games?
I would say it's more logical I believe it's more economical on the front end, but when you want to port to console and when you want to make something that is performant, Unreal, in my opinion, I mean, all the stuff, like Megascans, the real-time global illumination. This stuff is very heavy, and I think it's going to cause the Nintendo Switch to catch fire. Whereas Unity is built for porting. I mean, that's what it's the original impetus of the entire engine was to, that's why they called it Unity, because it unifies all the different platforms.
Yeah, for sure.
So that said, for me, Unreal is logical on the front end, because it's like, yay, let's make a shooter and let's get it done. Let's have all the basic elements made out of the box with the templates. But the problem is if you want to then extend that and create a full-fledged game that's available on all consoles. This is why a lot of publishers I talk to, they always say, hey, if your game is Unreal, we're potentially less likely to sign it than if it's Unity. I've been told
Interesting. That is really, I did not know that at all. Huh. Wow.
So I could, my sort of, the way I think about it is Unreal's great when you want to get going and just get going right out of the box. But Unity's better. This sounds so backwards, but I think it's a better engine long term. Despite the fact that they scared us with their real time or their runtime fees.
Right, yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it certainly got me to download Godot and poke around in it for a little bit. I mean, not that we would ever change if Unity they can basically do whatever they want to us for this game. I mean, there's no way we could ever change mid-production cycle. Yeah. But we're definitely going to be messing around with Godot next for our next game. Godot kind of has a similar thing going for it that Unity did back when I first started eShade. Like on paper, there hasn't been very much beautiful stuff that has been made with Godot yet. But as an artist, I look at the graphics features and I'm like, yeah, I could knock people's socks off with it. I can make a game that it would be like the best thing that's ever been made in Godot, like visually. I feel like I could do that in like a month. Yeah. So I definitely think it's worth a try.
Right.
Because just it really isn't the cost of the engine, although the cost is incredibly significant. Everyone's like, oh, well, you only pay once you make $1 million. It's like, okay, well, I am going to make $1 million. And then you pay the really expensive. Oh yeah, arrogant bastard.
I'm kidding.
I have like the opposite of imposter syndrome, where I think everyone else is an imposter and I'm just like an arrogant ass. So I think we call it arrogant ass syndrome. Anyhow.
Oh, that's great. I wish I had that.
No, it's good to be humble, Thomas. Good.
Yeah. How could you be, dude? eShade, you just killed it. I mean, you did so well. So I don't blame you. And I think Songs of Glimmerwake is definitely gonna do well. It's looking really, really cool.
It's got 100,000 wish lists right now, which is
good. Yeah.
Well, more. I mean, wish lists were different back in the day. I mean, eShade only shipped with 28,000 wish lists. So we're certainly doing better than that. But I think eShade vastly outperformed its initial wish list pre-launch numbers. So I'm certainly not expecting the same Burkett ratio, as it were. Yeah. For folks who don't know what a Burkett ratio is, this Jake Burkett, which is a kind of a long-time figure in the indie game world. He came up with this correlation stat of wish lists to week one sales. And it's not a conversion rate. So it's not like how many people wish listed your game that end up buying your game. It's simply how many people buy your game compared to how many people wish listed your game. And that number has been going down over the years. I think we're at like 0.2 or something.
Oh, interesting.
Like that. I think it used to be more like 0.4.
Okay, so can you run the numbers for us here? If you have 100,000 wish lists, what's the equation?
Oh, it should be like 20,000 units in the first week.
Okay,
and
which
I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna price the game at, but if we, let's say our net post-platform take-home, let's just say it's going to be like $13 a unit. It's going to be $260,000 in the first week.
Yep.
The first week is probably, it's we'll just do times 3, and that'll give us our first year. and then we'll do times 3 again, and that'll give us our lifetime. I used to do times 2 for that last number, like that your first year was half your sales. I found that not to be true.
Yeah.
It seems like it's a little more linear than that. So that puts us at about
2.3.
Yeah, that's the take home, or the pre-tax take home.
Yeah.
So
it looks like it's going to do almost identical to eShade.
At 100,000 wish lists, but the thing is we have not done a Next Fest yet. Next Fest is how you get wish lists. It's like there's 2 metrics. There's your wish list count pre-launch and your wish list count pre-launch post Next Fest. Like the Next Fest is really, really, really big. And I expect that I'll be sad if we get less than 10,000 wish lists. I'm expecting to get 20,000, 30,000, 40,000. I could even conceive of getting 50,000 just because our game is a effing banger. Like, I think that when people play it, they're going to lose their minds. I really do. I think that Glimmerwick is way better than eShade. And when people play it, I think that, like, everyone who's played it so far has been, like, I think, and I don't think they're blowing smoke. They seem, like, to really, really enjoy it, so.
Well, okay, so how does I want to talk about Glimmerwick's hook, but hang tight. Let's talk about this wish list thing, because I want people to understand how they can replicate this. When it comes to, number 1, how did you get to 100,000? And then number 2, talk me through Steam Next Fest and how you're going to do that.
So 100,000 is, we have a really high organic wish list number. Like, we get around 100 wish list ads a day from doing literally nothing. Like, that is just Steam internal traffic. I don't know how much of that has been propped up by, like, beats we've made in the past that have sort of accelerated us in the algorithm. I expect very little. I think that the algorithm is mostly velocity driven. At least that's what Valve says. And it certainly appears to be true. I think that the reason why we get 100 organic wishlist ads a day is because Steam just gives us a little traffic, and a certain percentage of the people that are seeing the game are wishlisting the game, and it's just higher than a lot of other stuff that Steam is showing people. Thus, we get pretty high amount of internal wish lists. It really is that simple. It's not like it's not like we like made nice with like the Valve man or something. I don't know. It's just literally people are seeing the game and they're wish listing it.
How are they seeing the game?
Well, right now, just speaking about organic wish lists, it's just Steam internal traffic. They see it from the upcoming list, the discovery queue, I don't know what other lists our capsule is showing up in. Of course, a certain percentage of those are just like trickling in from other sources. So that's the first thing, is just the organic wish list ads are really high on Steam because I think it's doing pretty well as far as the upcoming algorithm goes. Then the other thing is that when we first announced the game, I think we got off to a pretty good start. Our PR firm, which is called Player 2 PR, who's headed by Charlene LeBron, she had the idea of pitching our entire announcement. So our trailer, the first screenshots that nobody even knew what we were working on, giving the entire announcement to a journalist that worked at IGN, who eShade was her favorite game of 2019. So
yes,
Charlene just had the sort of like landscape knowledge to know, like, hey, this journalist works at IGN now. She really liked your game. Like, that alone made it worth the PR firm for us, just the idea to do that, because I have no idea where people are. I don't keep track of where journalists are, working.
Well,
and
I
stuff.
can speak to that if you don't mind. I want to give the audience.
Means.
I want to give my perspective, because a lot of people listening, right when you said PR firm, I thought I want to bring it back to reality, because a lot of people that scares them and they think, oh, that's not me. I can't do that. eShade is this big corporation now.
Right. Or we had one for eShade too, but people just assume like, oh, so you were just like basically a trust fund baby, right? You were a trust fund baby.
No.
That's why it was like millions to do that.
So I want to sort of basically bring my strategy, because I had a publisher, right? And I won't speak to which publisher it was. It's not my current publisher, 3D Realms, is doing great. But one of my previous publishers
on Pinstripe or
I don't want to say.
Okay.
I don't want to say.
Okay.
One of them they weren't doing the legwork I wanted them to do when it came to PR and when it came to getting press. Okay. So instead of me relying on them to do what you guys did, which is, well, get a really good PR firm and spend the money, I didn't rely on that. I just said, you know what, I'm going to do this on my own. And so my strategy, and I want my audience to know that they can do this too, is to, this especially helps if you have a previous game that has any kind of coverage. So for me, I will go on Metacritic, and number one, I will look for people who've written articles about my own games, and then I'll just reach out to them. That's a huge one. But if you don't have a game that you've already released and you want press coverage, what you do is you find games that are very, very similar to yours on Metacritic. Look for the reviews. Just go to, like, let's say, like, what's a game that's similar to Songs of Glimmerwake? Do you know?
Oh, yeah, like, I don't know. I mean, you could start with Stardew.
Yeah, sure. Find Stardew, go to Stardew and go and find every single article that has positive coverage. Don't find the negative ones. Positive coverage. And get a email list of 100 people, minimum. Email addresses of 100 people who've written articles about Stardew. And all you do is you hit them with an email saying, I made a game like Stardew. Here's the trailer.
Yeah, this is great advice for sure, for sure.
And look, 95% of those people aren't going to respond, but 5% will. Who is it? Oh, Kotaku just emailed me back. What? PC Gamer just emailed me back. What? This has happened so many times. I got Time Magazine to do this with the
awesome.
the same freaking strategy, which is you find people who like certain games. Now the question is, well, they're not with Kotaku anymore because these press people, they jump from place to place. Because a lot of them are freelance.
Right.
And so what you do is you find their Twitter or their X account, and you'll find that typically they have their own blog site, and you email them through that, not their IGN account or whatever. So
that's a good tip.
That's really probably what your PR agency does. One of the things they do.
That's exactly, yeah, that is one of the biggest things they do for sure. Yeah.
And so people could do that themselves. But anyway, I digress.
No, that's a really good tip. And speaking to what you were mentioning before, like people get scared. They hear PR firm. Oh my God, that's like millions. It's like, no, it's not. It's not millions. They're short-term contracts. They're not working with you on your game like for years on end throughout your entire development. You're usually hiring them for your big beats. Usually hiring them for maybe your announcements, maybe your release date announcements, and maybe your actual release. Or, you know, if you're tighter on budget, you could just do actual release. What I'll say about hiring a PR firm, this is really counterintuitive, but I think that the bigger your game is, the more a PR firm can help you. I know that sounds really silly because a lot of people feel like, well, why would I hire a PR firm if my game is already big? It's like, it seems like that's kind of a PR firm is what you want to hire to make your game big, but unfortunately, that's not really how it works. I mean, your game has a certain like potential. It has a certain like amount of lift that it's naturally going to have just based on the production that it is, the genre that it is, and your brand equity going in and everything. And the bigger your game is going to be, trust me, the more all of this like PR stuff, social media stuff, key distribution, just all the things that go into all of your beats, the more they're going to suck away from your actual development. So because there's just going to be so much more to do, like the bigger your game is, the more press inquiries you get, the more keys you're distributing, all this stuff. So that's why I say that the bigger your game, the more organic lift your game already has, the more valuable a PR firm becomes. Because if your game looks completely unremarkable and average, it doesn't matter what PR firm you hire or how much you pay them. They can't force people to care about your game.
Yes.
They can't. Unfortunately, they don't have like mind control or anything. So, it's just one of those things where if you have the organic lift, a PR firm can be pretty helpful. And I've seen them for as cheap as like $2,000. I don't know if I'd trust one that would do a task which I think is bigger than $2,000. They more average cost I've seen around would be something more like 5 to 7 or something, probably going up now with inflation and everything.
I would say 10. I've
now
had PR
10.
firms in the past. I would say 10. And
okay.
if you want decent, like if you want them to work for you and actually care, probably 10. But it is about that initial I think, dude, I think of Songs of Glimmerick and Eastshade. I think of it as this beautiful garden or this beautiful field of corn that you've harvested. And so the question is, where did that come from? It goes all the way down to the seed. What was the, I love studying why certain games blow up and certain don't. It's so exciting to me because I'm looking at Songs of Glimmerick and I'm going, what is the seed here? What is the hook? And
Yes.
I see your first sentence here, and it says, become immersed in a musical woodland fantasy where people cast spells, where casting a spell is as easy as playing a song. So essentially, correct me if I'm wrong here, your hook is Stardew Valley, but with music.
I think you could call it that. And I think that you actually probably would have, even just glancing at our Steam page, you probably have a better idea of our hook than we do even. I mean, we like to believe we sort of understand how our game presents, but sometimes it's hard to really know. But if that's what you feel like the hook is looking at our Steam page, I'd say that's a good.
It's very similar to Eastshade. In your hook generation or your ideation process, in my opinion, this is sort of a repetition, because Eastshade, it's not about music, it's about painting.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm glad you see it that way. I am. I believe that as well. I think that our strength as a studio is making a place. As far as your philosophy, the Trinity hook, which I think is a beautiful framework for thinking about hooks. I'm sure people know what the Trinity hook is if they're watching your channel, but it's story mechanic. It's a story hook, mechanical hook, and is it a visual hook? Is the third one?
Yep. You can also make that auditory as well. I mean, you can combine them into sort of a sensory hook. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Audio visual hook. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I don't think our games have. I don't know. Do they even have a mechanical hook? Sometimes I think that this is not one of our strong suits. I guess we always have some kind of weird thing, like painting is sort of novel, I guess. Anyhow, I do think that the strength of our games is it's a setting, and people, hopefully when they see it, they immediately want to go there and they want to spend time there. Mm-hmm. And our design pillars they all serve the sense of place. If there's a mechanic in there that doesn't serve the sense of place, we don't have it. It's one of the reasons why our games don't have combat, because Skyrim is a game with a very strong sense of place, but it's also a place where 98% of the creatures or people you encounter are trying to murder you. So sometimes it feels almost more like an arena than like a fantasy world.
Yeah.
And since that mechanic, well, it's a great mechanic and it makes a great game, and I'm not crapping on Skyrim, and I'm certainly not saying our games are as good as Skyrim or anything like that.
Yeah.
One has to admit that sometimes the killing arena does get in the way a little bit of sense of place. Anyhow, that's
I
my
agree.
rant.
Sense of place. Let's break this down. What is sense of place? Is it mechanical? Is it story? Is it visual?
I think that in order to have a good sense of place, I think all those things have to serve the sense of place. When I think of sense of place at its heart, what it is like almost the feeling of travel, the feeling that you're somewhere new and you're soaking it all in. And I think especially folks who have traveled will know this feeling, like you walk around a new city like Munich or something, and you just get this vibe. And it's everything. It's the people walking by you. It's the sounds you're hearing. It's the smells. And of course the things you're seeing, the buildings and the sense of culture and things like that.
Yeah.
And building that, of course, is hard, and you need, it requires good art direction. It requires good audio. It requires probably a good soundtrack if your game has a soundtrack. And ideally, if you prioritize the sense of place, your mechanics will also help, or at least not get in the way of the sense of place. Because a game like, let's say, a multiplayer shooter, like, I don't know, PUBG or something, take your pick. It's pretty hard to have a sense of place when the game is so, like, what you're doing in the game, the verbs of the game, they're so strong. They're just completely dominating the show. It almost doesn't really matter where you are. It's all an arena anyway. That's, again, not knocking it. It's just a different priority, I guess, for our games.
You can knock it. It's fine.
No. I don't want to.
I know. I'm not a huge fan of those kind of games, but
yeah, I certainly don't play them. But I understand. I think I understand why people like them, and it's great that all different games, can have different design priorities and appeal to different people.
There's something here. It's so special because it's kind of like, would you tell Alfred Hitchcock or would you tell Quentin Tarantino that they need a hook for their movies? No.
That's a good question. Yeah.
I don't think no studio would be like, what's the hook?
Oh yeah, I know. You'd be like, "What the are you? Who do you
hook
think you're
is
talking
Tarantino.
to?"
Yeah, the hook is Tarantino, right?
The brand equity, yeah.
That's 100% true. And so when I look at Songs of Glimmerwick or Eastshade, I go, it's Eastshade. It's not like that's your hook. Your hook is like, we have a kind of game that has it feels like an Eastshade game. It has a sense of place.
You think so? I feel like we don't have any brand equity, or at least
it's not brand equity. It's like it's talent. Okay, it's as simple as talent. Because I think about a lot of game developers who I would say 95% of game developers listening right now, they need a freaking hook because they don't have they haven't harnessed their voice yet. Dude, you were born with a voice.
Thomas, how am I going to fit out this door? You're saying so many nice things to me. I think my head's going to get stuck.
That's right. You walked into this conversation with hubris. I forgot.
I've already got enough up. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. Keep it coming, man.
Keep it coming. Well,
no, I'm just kidding.
It's trying. I struggle with this because I have a lot of students who like take my courses and stuff. So like I make games and then I also teach people, and I struggle because I'm like, I want to give you a framework. I want to give people a framework and say you need a hook, and you need what I call the big bet principle, which is you need to find a genre and then twist it, because it's a much better way to market a game. Like you could say like Thomas the Tank Engine, but he's a spider,
right?
And that that is a great framework, but certain developers like Danny, they don't need a framework because they have a voice. Stephen King doesn't need a framework because he has a voice. The voice always wins.
That's a really interesting. I've never thought about it like that. I mean, I certainly try to make. I don't know. I don't prioritize the hook, but we try to make a hook. At least
I would say there's a hook, but like it's not. First off, there's the reason you try to do a visual hook and a mechanical hook and a story hook is not because you have to have all three. You should try to have all three. The same reason why I'm going to invest in Adobe, O'Reilly Auto Parts, and Walmart, because one of them can do well.
Oh, I see. You could diversify.
At least one.
Gotcha.
You want to diversify. The same is true with hook generation. It's like, a lot of people are like, well, I'll just have a really cool visual hook. And it's like, well, what if it's not cool? What if you just think it is?
Interesting.
And so when I look at your games, like let's talk about Eastshade. If I break it apart and I see this gorgeous cornfield of harvest and you made plenty of money, what was the seed? What made it work? It was the visuals reminding, like the camera zooming in, and it's that awkward, like uncanny valley conversation with an NPC.
Oh yeah. Sorry about that.
Elder Scrolls. No, I mean, I'm mainly thinking about Elder Scrolls, right?
Yeah, no, we definitely have some of that going.
And so you're capitalizing on the Elder Scrolls visuals, and so automatically people are like, "Ooh, it's got Elder Scrolls vibes." So you got the visual hook. Then all of a sudden, what? I can take pictures and it turns into paintings. You've got the mechanical hook. And from I don't know what the story is, but it seems like people just lapped that up. They love the story. So you had all three in that game. But I love what you're saying and sort of counteracting, like, well, sense of place is actually, here's the thing, dude. A hook is a marketing term, not a gaming term.
That's true. Yeah.
So Songs of Glimmerwick, it might be all about sense of place, but not in the marketing. Or is it?
No, I don't think it can. I mean, it's hard. We try, I think when you watch the trailer, it's like, I would say our trailers tend to be less action packed. We try to give you a little taste of like the tone, I guess. But it is really hard.
Was the goal to create that sense of place in the trailer?
Yeah, we tried. Yeah. We also wanted to create a little bit of a sense that this is a place full of small narratives and like an authored hand and strong tone. Yeah, we tried to make a sense of place. I guess I mean, even the way we made that trailer, we actually scripted out the shots that we thought would work, and then we actually made the shots. Like, we didn't just like, this is our game, we're going to record different cool stuff. It was literally, we made actual entire quests because we thought moments in that quest would show well in the trailer. It's kind of like backwards trailer design.
Nope. No.
It's not. That's how it should be. You're saying.
Not, I'm so excited you said this. I just had a podcast with Gavin, the creator of Choo Choo Charles.
I watched it. Yeah.
And he made this new game called Cuff Bust, right?
Oh, okay, new podcast. Never mind. Right.
Yeah. No, we have a new one coming out, and,
okay,
and
gotcha,
so it's just before yours. Okay.
Gotcha.
And he did the same thing you did. He was like, yeah, this is how we did the trailer, and it's like, it's not the right way to do a trailer. And I'm like, no, that's the right way to do a trailer. The wrong way to do a trailer is just record the game and then try and make it work.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
It won't go viral. You can't tell a story that way.
It's too important, right? That's right.
Yes.
I have two things to say about Gavin specifically. It's really funny. No, it's not enough. It's no it's only love. It's really funny that he mentioned that that's the wrong way. Maybe he's just being humble. I mean, I think
the way he mentioned it, he was like he actually mentioned it like it was just some side note. Yeah. You do a script.
Okay. And it's like nothing to, like, he just
it's like no big deal to him. Yeah.
So Gavin is the advice I always give to people who want to go full-time indie, the way I look at it is like, full-time indie means you want to be a project lead. If you want to be a project lead, you really, really, really fundamentally have to build a skill, at least one. You have to be an industry level something. In my opinion, that's how most successful studios are founded. They're usually founded, and I don't know if this was the case for you, Thomas, but I think typically studios are founded by someone with prior production experience. So I always say, like, focus on a skill, become a really good artist or a really good coder. Those are the skills I say, just because those are like boots on the ground, most of production work. And then you have people like Gavin who come along and basically learn everything at once and have, like, I call it like an everything eye, like basically an eye for it. You actually kind of have an everything eye as well, Thomas. Just like an eye for all these different things that usually are their own skills, like graphic design, your Steam capsule, your marketing copy, your trailer, the editing of your trailer, obviously the visuals in your game, and then like you even do your own soundtracks and things like that. Gavin has kind of one of these everything eyes and is tremendously talented, and it's sort of like flies in the face of my advice, like hone one skill to a really high level and then think about being a project lead, because then you got people who just come and kind of do everything, and it's like, well, not everyone's that talented.
No.
And I think that it's okay to not be like, it's okay to not be as talented as Gavin. You can still make your way, but it's going to be pretty hard to do it the way that he does it. He just has this intuitive sense of pretty much all things, which is extremely helpful when you're trying to make a product that is good in a lot of ways.
Right.
The second thing I'll say about Gavin, and this one I just have to say, it's going to be kind of boring, but I'm so passionate about saying it. He mentioned in Choo Choo Charles that he modeled the train. He called it backwards. You guys were talking about doing things the wrong way, right? Mm-hmm. That there's not always one right way to do things. And he mentioned that he made the texture first and then unwrapped to the texture.
Yeah.
I have to say this because it's like, it's a pet peeve of mine, because so many students think that you make the model and then make the UV unwrap and then make the texture to the UV unwrap. Basically, I would say 90% of the stuff in a game environment artists will make them backwards as we call it.
Really?
We will unwrap to the texture. That is actually, I would call that the right way to do it, not the wrong way to do it.
Really?
Super random little aside.
Would you call that essentially flipping an asset?
Wait, why is it flipping an asset?
Well, you're saying you start with the mesh and then you what he was saying, let's get some clarity here. This is what Gavin said, and this is what I was saying. You take the PSD or the PNG and you open it in Photoshop and you color on it like wrapping paper.
Oh, that's just like 3D painting. I was pretty sure he was saying that he had like different bits on the texture that he was UV unwrapping to those bits and putting those like a bolt seam, like a trim sheet of a bolt seam, and he was moving UV unwrapping to that. And then I think afterward he went and 3D painted on it. If not, then my comment was to just remove it from the video because it doesn't make any sense. Well, if he was just 3D painting, that's really normal to 3D paint on a texture.
Right. And so I think your point is that, well, here's one thing that definitely happens. And I want people to comment below if you feel this way. You feel like you're doing it all wrong all the time. Yeah. Now, you're cocky and horrible. You're just you're a terrible cocky person. No, I'm kidding.
This is true.
You have more confidence. You have more confidence though than most game devs. But do you know that feeling of like you're just putting it together and you're thinking, I've got to be doing this wrong?
Well, if I'm doing something, then it means it is the right way. So I'm sort of a rubric to measure all other things. No, I'm just kidding. No, I totally felt like that, especially when I was starting out. I was like, how are you supposed to make a tree? Like, what is the way, quote unquote, to make a tree in a video game of X fidelity? It's like there's so many ways to make a tree, and some of them are better for certain things than others. But there's a lot of ways to make a tree, and sometimes you can figure out a new way to make a tree, and it's actually better than the way that anyone's done it. Now, that's not to say that the sort of techniques of our forefathers, as it were, are just to be completely ignored, because there are, like, working in AAA, you do learn a lot of things about, like, maybe it's not the right way to do it, but it's the way that, like, a bunch of, like, really technical people with a lot of experience decided that it was going to work the best. So those things are really great just to know, just to have in your back pocket, like, okay, this is kind of how we would do it, on a game like Infamous Second Son. And maybe this is how we would do it in a game like Guild Wars, where maybe the poly count's a little lower and texture memory is a little tighter and things like that. Yeah. Those things are good to know. And I do think that my experience in games has helped me with that sort of stuff. But nowadays, I almost never feel like I'm doing something the wrong way.
Right.
I feel like I kind of know the ropes well enough to know what are the trade-offs for most methods, I guess.
I think so. We're about to wrap up our third game. I say me and my team, working on Twisted Tower, and I finally got to this state of mind where I could kind of make a game in my sleep, and from start to finish, because and even the scheduling of things, like everything has a time and a place, and in terms of the production schedule. And
Gotcha.
The big thing is most game developers don't know when to do certain things. It's kind of like building a house. It's like you don't lay the carpet before the foundation. With game dev, right. When you first start out, you're like, I'm going to hyper polish this character art.
Right.
And I used to do that. Or I'm going to work on the logo today. It's like, what? Like, unless you're like launching a Steam page, do not get the prototype, block it out. Do black and white, make it simple. But here's the thing, that the flip side of the coin is, if I want to eat a Papa John's pizza, or that kind, if I want to eat like a chain restaurant pizza, I'll go to Papa John's or God forbid Little Caesars, although frankly I love Little Caesars. And you're used to that flavor, right? And then you go and you get a pizza from a mom and pop shop, and you eat it, and there's a funk to it. It's like, I've never had that flavor before. But then you learn to love it, and it's like something you've never had before. And that's just because this person probably figured out how to make pizza outside of the industry. And I see. I love playing games where it's like, what? It's got like this David Lynch vibe where it's like, that was totally out of the blue. This person clearly has not been in the industry. And
I hear you.
And it's a feature, not a bug. It's a feature, not a mistake. And so I just want to encourage the people listening, like, when you make games quote unquote wrong, or you do things outside of what the mainstream says, that's what creates these games that are so unique, and they just have that special funk that seems bad at first, but it's actually wonderful. Yeah. Undertale's a great example. Undertale's like such a weird looking game. It looks like it was made by, well, maybe Toby Fox is crazy, you know? It looks like it was made by a crazy person. But it's awesome. It's awesome, you know?
Right. Yeah, for sure. I know what you mean, and it's true. And you also don't want to be paralyzed by wondering if you're doing it the right way. This is just a slow way to work, you know? Like, you just forge ahead and do it. So, and you might get the funky flavor as a added side effect. So it's a good thing.
Yeah. You don't want it to be too funky. You don't want it to make the player sick. But you want it. You want it to be you. You want it to be your voice.
Or cause performance problems, right?
100%. You know, it's funny. I was talking to my publisher, and I was like, "Guys, I'm so scared." We had a meeting. I said, I'm so scared. I'm going to get bad reviews for Twisted Tower. And you know, they didn't just shrug it off, because you know, there's a lot of things we need to do with that game. But what they did say was, "Dude, the majority of or a lot of bad reviews are just people overlooking bugs, or the game not running at a good frame rate, you know, or it not including keybinds in the options."
That we have had all those criticisms.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? It's always the things you're like, I'll do that later. Right now I need to focus on this color palette or this mood, you know? Yeah. And that's not what players are worried about. They're worried about this being cheated, you know?
That's true. They don't seem to comment much about. There's certain things that players just don't even comment on, which is kind of interesting, and we put so much energy into them. which I think is good. I mean, we need to put energy into them, but anyhow.
Yeah. Well, man, this has been a great conversation. I love picking your brain. You are a very special indie, because it's almost like you were born to do this. You can just tell by the way you talk about it. And
according to my YouTube comments, I'm not an indie, Thomas. I'm actually just like, I don't know. I don't know what I am. Who said that? An indie. So many people, like at least 50 comments.
Bro. Why? Because you made money? Oh no, he made money. Well, of course he did.
It's fascinating. I think there's kind of a couple brands of it. One is that because I came from AAA, I'm not indie, which is really funny, because all my friends in AAA would very much not feel that way. Like, this dude just like basically effed off for 5 years. Like, we haven't seen him. He's like living in this, you know, studio apartment somewhere. And then the other brand of it is like, they hear, oh, you hired a PR firm. Oh, you hired, they hear, like, we like to give credit to everyone. And so we, you know, listed everyone in the credits, or in the postmortem, I mean. And like, people are hearing that, well, you have like a localization firm like that. You're not indie. You just hired a bunch of people. What? Like, they just kind of come to that conclusion. I know, it's really strange. I don't even know what to, you know, it's not even good to think about them, but it does make me wonder, like, what do you, like, every game you think is indie is not indie according to this rule, because like, even the most indie of indies, like, you know, Concerned Ape, like, that game had he doesn't speak French. Yeah. He didn't localize it. They also had a publisher, right? So you know,
dude, it's so frustrating. I actually recently hired a coach who's going to help me with the various sort of projects that I do in the businesses I run.
That's cool.
Yeah, I hired him last week. Cool. He's really cool. I won't disclose his name. He's another YouTuber, but I hired him, and one of the reasons I hired him was because he helps reframe your thinking, among other things. But the reason
now is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
You go ahead. What's your question?
Oh, I was just going to ask, like, does it have to, just because, were you reminded of it because, like, do you struggle with like just negative feedback in general?
No. People who write comments like that need a reframe.
I see what you're saying. Gotcha.
Here's what's frustrating. Okay, so people who are hearing right now, they're hearing you say things like $100,000. They're hearing me say $500,000 for the cost of our game. They're hearing you say $1 million for Songs of Glimmerwick. And in their brain, they're like, that will never be me. It's impossible. This is so outside of my frame that it's not indie. And they wash their hands of it. That's not indie.
Right.
That's not me. And I just want everyone listening to go, I just want you to know, we've been there with you. I've been there where it makes no sense that how on earth could I spend $500,000? I don't have $500,000. But it just happens. You just keep pushing, and you come up with a great idea, and then you just make the game. And then you look back 3 years later and you go, holy crap, I just spent $500,000. Where did that come from? How did this happen? It sort of just naturally happens when you work your butt off.
Brick by brick.
That's right. That's right. And so I don't
I don't know.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna. I don't know how hard I actually work, but I guess something is happening right.
Yeah.
I don't know if I work my butt off.
Right. Well, I don't know if I do either anymore, but I know that
it feels like I work less hard than I used to.
Do you ever get guilty about it? Like, I'm not who I used to be.
Every day. Every day. No, really, every day. I feel like I wonder if I even have it in me anymore to work the way that I used to work, and I kind of feel sad about it.
Of course you don't. Why would you? You're getting old, dude.
I don't know. I feel like I should be able to. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
You've got a baby, a wife, and you're 33. So of course you're going to be exhausted. I have a phrase that I like to say that sounds really, really sexual, but it's not. The older you get, you should be paid more for your mouth than your hands.
Okay.
And again, it sounds very, very raunchy, but what I mean is that just saying something is worth $1,000. And
oh man,
it's essentially like saying we all become consultants, because and you're consulting your own team. You're saying, hey, you're so good at communicating that you say, hey, I want that tree to be pink, and I want that tree to be look. Actually, have you ever seen the painter Ivan Durrell? Blah blah blah. Reference his imagery while you're doing the artwork. You become a consultant, and all you find yourself doing is talking. This is why people who are like 50 years old find themselves in these positions where all they're doing is meetings and flying to different places and having meetings. It's because their time is better spent speaking than it is doing. And I don't think you should feel, I don't know if that's true for you. It's true for me. And I don't think that you should feel guilty about that. You're becoming a director. That's really what you're becoming. And that's okay.
I feel like I feel like my mouth is not valuable yet. And I think that I am so good in the trenches. I feel like I am so good at making stuff. And sometimes I wonder if I'm like, it's almost like I still feel the opposite. Like, is my time wasted by not, there's time for both. There's time to do the talking, as it were, and time to be in the trenches. And sometimes I just feel like I don't have the same. Anyhow, I
don't agree with you at all. I think that I think it's the dumbest thing you've ever said, because I look at you, I look at your YouTube video that has 1.1 million views, and I say,
oh my God,
I say, this guy just said to all these people listening that his mouth isn't worth anything, yet he has 1 million people who probably ended up buying eShade.
We got a good sales bump from
I'm
that.
sure you did. So don't you tell me that your mouth isn't valuable. That's the title of this podcast. Your mouth is valuable.
And I feel like I've been talking your ear off too, so I feel like it's especially.
No, you haven't. Anytime I have a podcast, I'm like, I just hope they talk. Please talk. Because otherwise, because I've had comments.
Oh, interesting.
I'll have comments below that people are like, Thomas, all you did was interrupt the guest. So.
Oh, and then you felt like, well, I was filling space, maybe.
I was helping them. Cool. Well, hey, so everybody listen in, wish list Songs of Glimmerwick below. Also purchase eShade below. Any other shout outs you want to do, Danny?
Thank you for that. Yeah. I also am starting sort of fledgling YouTube channel if you want to go check out my videos there.
Absolutely.
I've got devlogs. I've got some other game dev related topics. I've got a video on marketing and how it's probably not why your game is failing. And of course, our postmortem on eShade as well.
Danny, would you be willing to give me 6 more minutes of your time here?
Dude, I would give you like 2 hours of my time. I'm really enjoying this conversation.
Give my audience and give me an understanding of why the heck you're going to waste your time on a YouTube channel. Go.
Okay, so I think that, well, for one, as you mentioned, I'm getting old, and it's either that old people, their speaking is more valuable, or they just like to wag their tongues because their like ego is growing or something. I think I'm probably the latter. No, but actually, I think that I just wanted to center on a new social media platform, and I really like that YouTube has an algorithm in a way that some of the others don't. I haven't really cracked the code of what, I'm not good at making TikToks. I don't know what the kids think is funny these days. I'm not good at being clever. I'm not good at making short tweets, that go viral. What I can do is polish something to the nines, and YouTube definitely rewards I guess like bigger productions in a way, like a 10-minute YouTube video that is just like tightly edited, well thought out. Like that format just shines much better on YouTube than it ever could on some of these other social media platforms. So for me personally, it's a good fit. But also, and this is probably more what your audience might be interested in, YouTube can be pretty good for brand building. When you think about how people make money on YouTube, it's, a lot of people make their money from like paid sponsorships, right? And you got to wonder like, okay, these big companies are willing to shell out so much money for these YouTubers who, might get 10,000 views, 100,000 views, a million views, whatever. It must be worth it to them, right? But here's the really magical part is that if you have your own thing that you can be selling, you basically can be your own sponsor for yourself, and YouTube becomes much more lucrative. The fact that, gosh, I think we must have gotten another 15,000 units sold or something from eShade from that one postmortem video that took me like 3 days to make. That can be really powerful if you're selling your own products. I know, Thomas, you do a fantastic job with this. Also, your courses and your information is super duper good. You're definitely one of the best game dev gurus.
Thank you.
Around.
I feel guilty about it every day.
Why though?
Because I used to sell publicly on YouTube, like, hey, this is on sale for 50% off, blah, blah, blah. And people would get frustrated because they were like, well, this is the point of the YouTube video, so I'm clicking off. And I understand that. I do. When I watch some videos and people promote their products, I'm like, I feel gross. So I figured out how to sell privately, and you do it with funnels, which is just a fancy way of saying you send emails.
Gotcha. You don't put the ad in the video.
You just, and people are going to join the funnel today. Like at the end of this video, I'm going to say, check out my webinar, blah, 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 and I'll get an email address. And then later down the line, if they're interested in buying a product, they can buy a product.
Gotcha.
Because I'll offer it to them because, many people want to know that the products exist. But
dude, they totally do.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, I'm just one data point, obviously, and I'm like not as sensitive to this as some other people are like, oh, you're trying to sell something? Yeah. Like, F you, man, I never want to hear from you. So I'm obviously a kind of a skewed data point, but like, you're giving away really good information, and it's really polished, and it's really concise, and you're a great orator.
Thank you.
You already give so much, and then if you want more, like, here's the thing, I don't know what people want, man. It's like, it's great that you're selling something. Why would you people have no idea how much effort and time and skill goes into making a single YouTube video, let alone the kind of output you have. Why would you, nobody on earth can afford to do that and not be selling you something.
Well, I'll tell you how much this video costs.
Yeah, it's crazy.
This video cost me, and this is important for people to know. Let's think here. Somewhere around $900, this conversation.
Okay.
This conversation.
So you're thinking and probably your own time, your editor's time.
Mm-hmm. It's $900 to $1,000 a pop. And so why would I do this free? Like, why would like I could do it every once in a while, but like if people want consistent content from YouTubers, it's great that the YouTuber gets paid. That's a good thing because the YouTuber is going to create great content around that audience, and they'll get paid to do it, and they'll keep doing it, and you get consistent uploads, right? So that's your goal, yeah. Your goal is to, well, it's not your goal. It's the financial goal is you could sell games with YouTube.
I want to have a centralized play. I want to be able to continue building my brand on YouTube and leverage the algorithm a little bit. I still, like, I'm going to be way more focused on our game. Our games make a lot of money. I think it would be really hard for me to ever make even close to that, or even like 10% of that on YouTube. Yeah. Maybe not. I don't know if I put a lot of effort into it, but I think I'm probably better at making games than making YouTube videos. But it'll just be nice to have one more source, one more funnel, I guess.
Yep. Well, I figured out where you're, you do have imposter syndrome. It's just not.
Oh,
yeah, you do. 100%. You because games are normal to you in your hormonal teenage years where you're forming your brain, it's solidified as Danny makes good games.
Yeah, it became my identity. Like I definitely wrapped up
of course you're not,
my identity.
That's right. Of course you're not going to have imposter syndrome with that. But now that you're outside of your hormonal teenage years and your brain is, well, it's like as solid as a rock. It's not going to go anywhere. It's a dusty attic. I'm just going to keep going here and make you feel terrible about your brain. But the reason I say, reason I say that is because the moment you start having kids, your brain sort of just, you have to really fight to keep it flexible, and you have to fight to shift it and to change you have to willfully fight to change your identity when you feel like you need to. You got to say, I know I'm 33. I know I just feel like I'm just a game developer, or I'm just this, or I'm just that. But it's now time to become a father. So I got to shift it and break it. And your baby will do all the work for you, actually. They'll crack your brain and change it. The same is true with your YouTube channel. It's like, if you were 18 and you got 1.2 million views, you'd be like, Mom, Dad, I'm a YouTuber.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. Yeah.
So you are. I would keep doing it.
You think so?
Yeah, you're doing great, dude. You're freaking. I'm looking at your views. I'm like, ugh. I'm kind of annoyed with you actually, because
no,
you're pulling great views. You're doing better than me.
I feel like I'll never. I don't have another topic that is like the postmortem, so it'll be hard to. I think.
It is hard.
Like I've heard it's harder to make 5 videos with 100,000 views each than it is to make one video with 2 million views or something like that.
It's true.
Yeah, so it'll be hard to find topics because I don't really want to become a game dev guru necessarily. Like, I'm not saying I love game dev gurus and you do a great job with it.
Thank you.
But I kind of want to try to speak to gamers. And I don't know how to or at least people who are really interested in video games. And I don't necessarily want everyone who watches my channel to have to be like a game dev. And I'm struggling finding content that like walks that line, I guess.
Well, it's your call to action.
Really know.
This will help you. I'm going to help you out here. What's your call to action?
I think it would be probably buying or wishlisting our game if I was,
Then why on earth would you target game devs? And you're on the right track.
Yeah, exactly.
People are like, well, Thomas, you do game dev content. Well, I'm not. When have I asked for a wish list? I never asked for wish lists.
Right. It feels like your call to action maybe is your core.
100%.
I mean, you definitely get residual wish lists as well.
Yeah, not really. It's
not really. Okay.
This channel, it's a different business. I have Atmos Games, which is the games that I make. That's a whole other business. Right now, this is a different business, and it's called full-time game dev. It's all about game dev. Yeah. It's all about becoming a full-time game developer, and I like to feature people like you who make games. Now, I would say that you ever seen the I've mentioned this before, but you ever seen the Lord of the Rings documentary?
all the time, Thomas. I literally just watched it yesterday. Maybe it came up in the YouTube algorithm.
Isn't it
that's why
great?
It's so good. It's so good.
Who's that for? Is that for filmmakers?
No, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So that's what I would do. I would target gamers with annoyingly precise content. Like, look at the intricate details in our illustration technique. And look how hand-drawn. Here's how this was drawn. And you're playing beautiful music. And you're showing this process that's almost like a magic trick. I would argue that your job is to be a street painter.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. That's a great thought. Do you attribute any of your sales to your YouTube brand equity for your games? Is it like no? So like literally 0%.
Well, effectively. I mean, it's
close.
I don't think about my games. I don't think about my YouTube channel as a billboard for my games. And it's not because YouTube isn't a billboard for games. It's that I've decided that is not for that YouTube. My efforts are more profitable in my teaching side hustle on YouTube.
Gotcha.
So I'm not telling you to do that. I'm saying that's because I'm a really good teacher. I don't know if you're a good teacher or not. I'm a really good teacher. I'm a really good coach. And so
yeah, I think you are.
It would be stupid for me to not make that my YouTube channel's aim. So people are like, well, I guess Thomas is a YouTuber and he's not a game developer. No, you can do it's 2024.
Yeah,
you can do
definitely.
You can do multiple things at once. And so for me, like 60% of my day, maybe 70% of my day is just making games and working with my team, and then 30% is like, okay, I need to do the YouTube stuff and teach.
I've defended you on Reddit before.
I'm sure you have. There are Reddit posts. Yep.
Yeah, I was like, hey, you guys, what is wrong with you? This dude has shipped 2 games that have done extremely well. Like, it's crazy. Like, your credibility is as good as anyone's on, Yeah. Like, there are actual game dev gurus who have never, not only have they not shipped a game or headed a project, they literally have never touched a production. Like, they've never even been part of production.
I know.
Here you are, like, yeah, project lead is crazy, man.
It's like Dumbledore. I'm going to compare myself to Dumbledore. Dumbledore, he drinks the Horcrux. He nearly dies. And he comes into the Defense of the Dark Arts classroom. And he stands in front of everybody and says, okay, I want to teach you how to do it too. And they go, oh, now he's teaching. Now he's selling. Because he charges for the school. It's like, guys, I've done this. I want to show you how to do it too. You can do it. No. I'm going to go buy a course from Skillshare. And it's like, they've never done it before.
Yeah.
So it's like kicking the person out of who's been in the trenches. It's like kicking them out and saying, we don't want you. And so it's like,
it's also
frustrating.
I can imagine. Yeah, because okay, if you don't want them to be making content for you to like learn, and you want them to be a game dev instead, guess what? They're not making content for you to learn.
That's right.
How are you going to even hear from them?
That's
like,
right.
If like by default, the second they start making you a really polished, concise video that you actually want to watch,
I think
is going to rule them out. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. I think it's I mean, I'll take some blame. I didn't know how to market. Course sales is a sleazy thing, dude. Like, it's got a real bad reputation, and it should, because there's a lot of gurus out there who are lying through their teeth.
I can see that, yeah.
And like you said, dude, there's some game devs, man, I get so frustrated. They're like, here's how you make games full time. And I'm like, I know you, and I know that you don't make money full time. I know you're making money from sponsorships. Don't tell me that you're making games from your own money from your own games. You might make some, but you're not making a full-time salary. And it makes me
that too. Yeah.
It makes me frustrated. I get mad because it's making me look like I'm a liar. Because it's like, well, I guess he barely makes money off his games. And I'm like, if I could show you the numbers of the deal that I signed with 3D Realms, you might change your mind. So I get really fussy about this. And it makes me frustrated because the game dev YouTube sphere is starting to get scary. The reason it's getting scary is because everyone's starting to give advice. And it's like, who do you listen to? because a lot of these
Yeah.
people should not be giving advice.
Yeah, for sure.
You should.
For sure.
I should, because we're in the trenches. If we've done it, we've made plenty of money off our games. But there are some YouTubers who are, it's kind of like LARPing as a game dev.
It's exactly like that. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I recently made a video called, I don't even remember, marketing is not why your most indie games fail.
Oh,
And-
yeah. You did that one? That's
yeah.
awesome. And you have every right to say anything because you've done it, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely completely against the like current indie dev zeitgeist.
Yeah.
Of like, it's totally not like, I don't know how you feel about that particular thing, but like in the greater world of indie dev, everyone thinks that it's just this, oh, you know, I don't know how to market, so like I'll never be like an Undertale like sort of thing. It's crazy. It's nuts.
Well, I totally agree with you. Of course, it's so simple. Maybe you disagree. I don't know, but you have to light the fire to market it. If you're gonna blow on the fire and blow the bellows on the fire, you have to light it to begin with.
There's got to be a fire. It's got to be something.
There has to be kindling. There's got to be something there.
People have to
and
actually
that's the idea.
want it. Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
For sure. For
So
sure.
you've got to make something people want. You got to provide value. The only way to provide value, well, this is the biggest argument. I started a big fuss on Twitter apparently when I said fun is the most important part of your game. And I know I think you disagree with me.
I was so
because-
hoping that this topic would come up.
I want to hear your argument because I hope we disagree.
So, well, do you think that fun is, what was the tweet?
The tweet is fun is the most important part of your game.
Okay. That's so, and do you agree with, I remember I just watched a podcast you were doing where you seemed a little bit more on the fence as if that
I'm not on the fence anymore.
Okay. Fun. You feel that fun is the most important part.
Yes.
I think that for many, many games, most games, that is absolutely true. I think that, you know, just like I don't want to bore you if you've already been, I mean, this discussion is old, right? This discussion is at least 15 years old. I've seen people talking about it, particularly from, okay, if you've never touched the literary side of games analysis or the academic side of games analysis, this probably sounds completely insane. Like, so if a game's not fun, what is it? It's just a crappy game, right? That's how a lot of people feel. Mm-hmm. But we don't really have that problem in other art mediums. Like in cinema, you know, Avengers, it's a good movie. It's a fun movie. Schindler's List, also a good movie. Not a fun movie. It's just one way of describing something. I think that there are other dimensions to games than fun. I think fun is a great one and it's a fine one to pursue. The concrete example, because if I don't give a concrete example, this is all just like literary bullshit that doesn't make any sense. Sorry, I don't know if you can curse on this.
You're fine.
Okay,
Yeah, you're fine.
Like Elden Ring, and probably any FromSoft game for that matter. I know a lot of people played that, so I think that's a good touch point. I'm not sure if that game is fun. I'm not, and if it is fun, I'm not sure that is primarily why people play it. I think that, I mean, clearly the game is challenging and that challenge is attractive to us, but I'm not necessarily sure fun is the best, unless you're one of these people that kind of can label anything as fun, right? Like Schindler's List is actually a really fun movie because the cinematography is good, and watching good cinematography is a heck of a lot more fun than watching bad cinematography. You know, you could call anything fun, but I do think that challenge for one, and the other thing that I think really is the reason why people like Elden Ring, that game is not trying to evoke fun, it's trying to evoke awe. That game is trying to be awesome in the traditional sense. And I think anyone who has, taken the elevator down the, I don't remember how to say, Shifra well or something like that. When you discover that there's this, I don't want to do any spoilers, but there is a moment in Elden Ring that I think most people will recognize as probably the best moment in the game and maybe the best moment in gaming. It's that moment that is, I believe, the reason why people play Elden Ring. And I don't think people who have experienced it would necessarily think fun as their first adjective. I think that they would think wonder. So that's my rant.
It's great. It's great. And I will guarantee that 90% of the people in the comments will agree with you.
Really?
And
Okay.
oh yes, and you're probably right. However, I like to troll a little bit, and I like to be hyperbolic a little bit.
Good. I like it.
To make a point. Like, okay, first off, I saw, was it you who mentioned Schindler's List on Twitter?
I don't think I've ever mentioned Schindler's List on Twitter, but I know it's that this is an old example of a good movie that's not fun. I don't even know.
I think it's a frustrating example.
Okay.
Because it's like, duh. Like, of course Schindler's List it's an outlier. It's like Schindler's List is always used as this example of like, it's always used to describe something. It's kind of like what people evoke. I don't even know if I could say the word Hitler.
Okay.
They evoke that name to get a point across, and it's like you just chose the most extreme example to win a debate.
I could definitely do other movies that I think would. I don't want to stop your rant though.
But also, it's called a movie for a reason. It's not called a game. So I found somebody argued with me about this on Twitter. They said they brought up all these movies, and I'm like, yeah, but those aren't games. Like when I'm playing like, okay, my son and my daughter innately know what a game is. Mm-hmm. Because they asked me to play games with them all the time, like hide and seek. They asked me to play games with them all the time because like their core subconscious understanding of a game is that it's fun. And so we call them video games because they're games that are videos. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand that not every game has to be fun. I agree. However, hyperbolically, sort of a simplification or a rule of thumb or a proverb of Thomas, I think it still stands, which is when in doubt, how about that? When in doubt, at least make it fun.
I can see that.
Because
yeah.
Not everybody knows how to make a game that creates a sense of place. Like you mentioned, that's tough. It's like if you're gonna override fun with sense of place, you better be sure that that's your skill.
Fun is actually harder for me than sense of place, but everyone has different strong
I agree.
suits.
And I'm the same way, dude. Like story for me is so much easier than fun. It's so much easier for me to tell a story than fun. However, the second thing I wanted to bring up was I'm not the person to ask about Elden Ring because I can't function when I play that game. Yeah, I can't handle it.
I hate so much about that game, but at the same time, I know I can see what a masterpiece it is. But yeah, it's not for me, but it is also for me. It's a very weird game for me.
Have you ever, you know that feeling after a insane workout or a run or a haunted house? Where like I'm trying to think of the best example here, and none of that haunted house was fun. But the moment you got out, I can't think of a better word. It's like an ejaculation of joy.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah, exactly. Like,
so that's Elden Ring, right? That's Dark Souls. It's misery, and then you beat the boss, and you're like, holy crap!
The pride of completing the challenge.
Yeah, and you stand up and I did this. It was like 11 p.m. and my wife was asleep, and I finally beat this boss, and I stood up and I peacocked around the room. Like,
Peacock.
I did it! It's me! Yeah, chest out, throwing the controller on the bed.
What you know about Thomas? What you know?
That's really fun. Even this conversation is fun. So my argument against even games like Elden Ring is like, no, it is fun.
Okay, but
like,
the fun comes.
There's something really fun about that.
Okay, so it's a semantic thing then, because like I think you're expanding the definition of fun probably beyond more what
you think so.
I think so. At least when the academics speak about that not every game has to be fun. I think that feeling they would call that like the satisfaction of completing a challenge or maybe maybe competitiveness we could call it. I don't know if it's competitiveness. That's something challenge. I would say. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I do think that sense of wonder when you in an adventure game specifically when you get to a new place and you're just like, oh my God, this is so amazing. Like this is a crazy place. Like there's so many NPCs walking around. Look at all this stuff. It feels more like travel almost. It feels more like turning a beautiful street corner in Warsaw and being enchanted by what you're seeing and what you're hearing and what you're smelling and all that.
Yeah.
It feels more like that. And I don't know if I'd say it was so fun to walk around the streets of Warsaw. Maybe I would. I don't know. Maybe I could just call it fun, and it's just that simple.
Yeah. Part of the reason why I stand my ground here is because I think it's valuable to think in. It's valuable for me to think black and white like that. Like, because I was it was 8 years ago. My brother, he played one of my games. I think he played Pinstripe, and he was like, it was really emotional, but like, Thomas, do you ever think it'd be a good idea to just make your games more fun?
Oh dear.
And he was right. Like, I wish that I could go back in time. This sounds so gross, because it seems like I'm becoming like a capitalistic pig.
No.
But I wish I could go back to Pinstripe and just make it more fun. Because it would have done way better.
You're talking about when you say, you mean like kinesthetics and the mechanics, or like more like spatial games, or more combat, or what are you thinking?
I think just fun, doing things that make people smile, you know, throwing stuff into the game that surprises people, makes them smile, makes them laugh. It doesn't matter what it is, mechanically, story. I just wish I would have focused on, I think I tweeted this 3 days ago, which is like, getting a smile should be your goal.
Okay.
And people are like, what about horror games? I'm like, same thing. Get that smile, but like that freaked out smile, that PewDiePie scream. Get that.
Gotcha.
You know?
I see.
And I find that aim for me. Do you think people don't smile when they play your games?
I don't know. Oh, well, I've seen people play on Twitch. This is a good question. Yeah, no, they do smile. They do smile but it's like awe. It's like, wow, oh my gosh. I don't know if is it a smile though? I don't know. It's like,
yeah,
their jaws are open. This sounds like I'm being arrogant, and again, no, but literally, like, I've seen people that like are freaking out, like their jaws are open.
No, that's good, man. It's like you said, it's an age-old debate, and the only reason I stand my ground here, and the reason I tweet out quick rules of thumb to get a reaction, is because they're so helpful to me. Like, they're more effective than they are true.
Gotcha. This is a great frame to look at things. Yeah.
It's you know, people use the same discussion about God. I personally believe in God, but some people say, I want to act like, I think Richard Dawkins says this, I want to act like I believe in God just so that I live my life better. And the same is true with, like, for me personally, it's so much more effective for me to go, aim is fun, because for me personally, if I don't aim in that direction with hyper intensity, my game will just be like dark and grueling and sad, because that's my default disposition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Is there anything in your games that you feel like you have to drive at very strongly, because if you don't, your default state will avoid it?
Oh, this is a really good question. Yeah, I think that, like, I think I struggle with, like, any sort of systemic mechanical design. Like, we often want, it's so easy to make a puzzle game for me and for Jacqueline, that, like, when you make a quest and it has exactly one solution, and it feels harder for us to make a quest where there's multiple ways to solve it, because the game systems are that robust. and the game systems they're all auxiliary to each other, and they interconnect with each other, and they support each other. That sort of mechanical design does not come as naturally to us as like just, let's say, coming up with a really great quest concept that people are really interested in with cool twists and turns and stuff like that.
Right.
But generally, I mean, any game I have authority in designing will have like lots of just happy things and rainbows. Like I'm like kind of like the opposite. Like everything's a utopia with me. Actually, we had one thing in Eastshade that was really, really, really dark. I don't know what came over me, but it was completely not the tone of the game. But I just thought it'd be really cool if you made this one quest decision, this guy actually kills himself.
Golly.
It was so not in the tone of the game, but I just thought it was the quest was interesting, and wouldn't players be like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. Yeah. Like this character's gone. Like it would just like, I was just kind of on the path of like feedback in games.
Yeah.
And 4 days after we launched, Jacqueline woke me up in the night. She was like, I'm really worried about that being in the game. You've been reading what everyone's saying about the game. Everyone's saying it's almost like therapy for them. Like it's meditative. They feel better. It's gotten rid of their depression, whatever. Like people are saying crazy stuff about the game, and they've got this super dark quest that has suicide in it. Like you have to take that out right now. You have to take it out. And I'm like, yeah, but it's such a good quest. She's like, you have to take it out. It's not right. And I did not go to bed until that quest was removed from the game.
Oh no.
We regression tested it and pushed the update silently. We didn't even mention it in the notes, and it was gone. And I don't know how many people actually saw that quest.
That's really, really dark of you, Danny. Was it just a particularly like rainy day in Seattle?
I don't know.
Like what in the world? I would have kept it in. Okay. I would have kept it in.
Yeah.
Apple actually made us put a disclaimer on our game when they licensed Neversong for Apple Arcade, and they said, look, man, you need to put a suicide disclaimer at the beginning of the game, because it's just like chock full of that stuff.
Gotcha.
Okay, well, we could go on for 5 hours, apparently. We've been doing almost 2 here.
So. And I'm sorry to take your time.
No, don't be sorry. This is great. I'm going to exploit this content and make some money.
Please do, by all means. My camera's about to die, so it's good.
Yeah. All right, Danny. Well, I got to run to a different meeting. This was so fun, dude. Thanks for hanging out.
I had a blast, and thank you for having me on. I really am honored and have enjoyed it.
By the way, if you're like me and you always dreamt of making an indie game as a full-time job, I have a free webinar below that goes into exactly how to make 6 figures with just a demo. I was just like you for years. I thought I had to make a game in its entirety before getting a paycheck, but there's actually 3 ways to make 6 figures before even finishing your game. I've done this multiple times. So check it out below if you do want to go full-time indie. And thanks for watching.